like saying metaphor ReFantazio. I
Mm-hmm.
like saying it. I like saying metaphor
Yeah, last night
ReFantazio.
I had to tell my wife was like, "What's this game you're playing?" And I was like, "I don't want to tell you."
Metaphor ReFantazio.
Yeah, she did a couple of those. Excuse me, one more time.
You have to say it while
Persona
like
6. Sorry, it kept coming out weird. It's
you have to say it while
Yes,
gesticulating wildly like you're in the center of a three-ring circus. Metaphor ReFantazio.
yes, 100%. It's like your tuxedo mask from Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
You've been playing it though.
I have been playing it.
Yeah.
Um, so to preface this, I am not a big SMT or Persona fan. I don't dislike the games at all. They are daunting.
Yes.
These 80 plus hour RPGs, lots of it stresses me out, this idea of forming bonds between your characters, and especially in the Persona games, like, who do I want to hang out with? Oh, you're telling me I have to do a test today? I'm going to Google the answers before this test comes up because it stresses me out because the games can be difficult. Um that all that being said, I try all of them. I give them a fair shake, and this is a very good one of those. Despite the fact that it has a unique name, it is still of that same lineage. So if you are a Persona fan specifically, I think you'll be super satisfied with this game. It is um, set in a fantasy world. It is called Metaphor, and boy, is it steeped in metaphors. They talk about this idea of like there are different magical kind of races. They call them tribes, and certain tribes are treated less than other tribes. Metaphor. Um,
Metaphor. Sure.
so, but the kind of overarching story is this idea that the king of this world has you see he's been murdered. You see who murders him, but all these other people don't know that he's been murdered, but they kind of suspect. And the prince, who would have been his successor, is like, you think he's dead, or certain people think he's dead, but as the main character that he's actually like in a curse coma. He's been put in a coma because of a curse. So the guy that you see has killed the king. I'm not spoiling anything. You see this before you even hit the title screen. Um, he is kind of vying for power, but you play a character that is connected to the prince, knows he's actually alive but in this coma, and you're trying to help him. You defeat the guy that put him in the curse, and you assume he'll come out of the curse coma. It feels weird to say this out loud, by the way. So that's kind of like the impetus, but
Does
that's
it feel weirder than saying ReFantazio?
no, because you don't usually say the game title out loud
I do.
all that much.
Constantly.
Well, yeah, but while
You've
you're
never
playing
played
it,
games with Jeff. Yeah, you play Smash Brothers with Jeff, and Jeff's like, Smash Brothers! Every time.
Now, if you play Smash Brothers with me, I'm just sitting around saying ReFantazio.
but yeah, so you're off on this adventure. That's kind of like the reason that you're on this adventure. It is a kind of magical world. There are characters that have like little horns growing out of their heads, or they have cat ears or animal looking ears, just sort of walking around. But it is at its core, it is a very Persona esque combat system. So instead of kind of calling forth a persona, you are uh it's like this weird scene where you rip your heart out of your chest, and then it and then it puts a kind of magical
Metaphor.
yeah, metaphor. Puts a
Rip your heart
magical
out of your
being in
chest.
front
It's
of
a
you,
metaphor.
that is the archetype. So there's like the warrior, there's the mage. Your character starts off as the seeker, and they have different magical attacks. Basically, if you've played a Persona game, you know exactly what you're getting. As you start to get into this stuff, then you can do your basic, okay, I'm going to do my melee attack with my melee weapon, or I'm going to use my archetype, which will manifest in front of you to do magic at the cost of MP. So they'll do, wind or fire or ice, and attack the enemies. And when you expose or exploit weaknesses, you can have the potential for getting additional turns. So you'll have these little turn icons. So let's say you have 3 characters in your party, you'll usually get 3 turns to attack the enemies. But if you exploit a weakness, you might get an additional turn on the character that exploited the weakness. It is standard JRPG fare, especially for Atlas's brand of these
Yeah.
games. So if you were on board for any of those prior games, if you have been playing, Persona 3 Reload this year, or you just were looking forward to the next game after Persona 5, or you're a SMT fan, this game is going to be super up your alley. It is steeped in that, but it's a unique universe. It's not doing the kind of high school kid thing. It has, it's a little bit of the kind of Elden Ring vibe of, not the same in terms of like the gameplay, but it's using a different wrapper around the experience. So this
Mm.
fantastical setting instead of more like gothic, or kind of kids at school or
But
solving murders.
this isn't the game that's gonna turn a non-Persona fan into
I don't
a
think so. The two things that I don't know how Persona 5 handled it. I can't remember, but there are difficulty settings when you start, and there is straight up a story difficulty, because I
Mm.
know that Persona 5, a lot of people said there's this point you'll hit like a real difficulty ramp, or where if you haven't been grinding, so there's that, but also when you're walking around the open world, it does this really cool thing where you can attack enemies. If you like hit them from behind, it'll stun them. So then when you enter battle, they'll lose their first turn because they're
Yeah.
stunned. But as you level up, if you are over leveled over certain enemies, you can just hit them in the open world. They will die and you'll get all the rewards you would have got. So the
Oh,
XP,
that's
the
cool.
money. So, in your classic JRPG, oh, the enemies are on the world. Instead of
Yeah.
initiating turn-based battles with everything, and you're like, okay, I have to do the scene to enter battle and do the attacks, blah blah blah. If they're lower that level than you, you will just hit them. So it's kind of a little bit more, of an active combat
A
system
little
for those.
streamlined. Yeah.
Yes, but it is still, you're waiting on your turn, you're choosing what to do. You have MP that manages what abilities you can do. You have different, sort of um, buffs and debuffs that you can put on your team or the enemies. The boss designs are crazy. One of the first bosses you fight is just like a little tooth. You just look like a little tooth. Um, yeah,
Little
it is.
tooth? What's
Yeah,
that a
it's.
metaphor for?
Don't ask. I don't know. But yeah, it is like, it
Like
has
the
all
teeth.
those crazy designs. Lots of care. You're gonna build connections with the characters. You're meeting people that have similar aims to you or conflicting aims to you, and it's steeped in all that stuff. So, uh, long story short, if you were waiting for this game, you're probably already playing it. You don't need me to tell you to play it, but it is it is one of those excellent games that they make, and I can 100% appreciate everything about it. The music is great. It's different. It's not just like, okay, we're doing Persona music. There's like a, you know, more of a kind of operatic kind of elements to it. It does play into that more magical setting really well. It's
Mm.
very flashy, sometimes too flashy in terms of like the menu transitions and everything. There's a lot of style. It's super slick.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
That's their whole jam. Is
it is
those menus
100%.
are something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe they were just like, oh, people like these. Well, we are no restraint now.
Yeah.
But if you like that, then it is going to be right up your alley. The I don't really have any criticisms of it from an outsider's perspective. There's nothing that I see. It
Mhm.
just, the idea of spending 80 to 100 hours in the middle of the fall gaming season is kind of
Yeah.
crazy to me, especially with, a more traditional my style RPG in Dragon Age right around the corner.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been playing. I've probably put about like dozen hours in. You spend like the first, I don't know, hour just walking around and getting dialogue. It takes a while to get into the combat. But yeah, once you get into it and you kind of learn what it's doing, it does have so many similarities. You can say, okay, well, this is just Metaphor ReFantazio's version of this. This is just Metaphor's version of this, or this is an upgraded or better version of this. But the cool thing I will say that they do combat wise with you were sort of limited in other Persona games or SMT games where you certain characters just filled a role. You can put the archetypes on anybody. So if you want your main character to be the mage, you want them to be the healer, whatever you want them to be, they can be. As far as I know, I don't know if it. And then those archetypes upgrade as you uh, use them more, and when they hit certain levels, you can unlock, I think, more advanced version of the archetypes. And having similar archetypes on your team, they can do synergy attacks and do a lot of crazy stuff. So it gets more complex as you go, as you would hope it would, in that lineage of game.
And there's a 5-hour demo for folks that are curious about it.
Yeah.
And the save carries over. It's the first 5 hours of the game, and your save will carry over into the main game.
Christian, I feel like you're the Persona fan of the three of us. Are you tempted by Metaphor ReFantazio?
Yeah, very much so. I Persona 3 I finished. Persona 5 I don't remember if it was the grind that finally got to me or not, but for whatever reason I just kind of fell off of that game. I really enjoyed my time with it. I think few games have the style that this lineage has. So I'm super excited about it. I just haven't found the time for it yet. I've had the demo installed on my computer since it came out. Haven't just spent the time with it yet, but I like this for, as Anthony talked about, I like the idea of tweaks to a system and in a new type of environment. I think this version of a fantasy setting is super exciting. Jeff, you always talk about liking turn-based combat. I like what this team has done with that over the years. These tweaks sound cool. And I like that everything is in a Tolkien fantasy world, and I really like seeing this approach to what high fantasy, quote unquote, can be. So I'm super excited about it. I'm sure I'll play it at some point. I just haven't found the time to sit down with it yet.
It does feel like a Dark Souls to Sekiro or a Warcraft to Starcraft. It's like we're still doing what we do, but we're doing it in a new environment, a new IP, new milieu.
Yeah, 100%. I do think if you were looking for like the Persona 6 level leap in terms of technology, it still looks like those games. For better, for worse. I think you either are in on that art style or the visuals, and it does, it does look a little bit dated. I'll say that. So if you were like, oh, what's the future of these games supposed to look like? This is still the here and now of them.
Gotcha. All right, well, that's Metaphor ReFantazio, and it is on Anthony's playlist. Both of